Hi everyone, my name is Dylan Caudell. I am a Senior Program Manager for the RAC Foundation. Tonight we are going to go through a short video on how to do an autonomous program for your robot and look at how to put a simple driver control code on your V5 VEX robot system. This video is intended for any of the new JROTC teams out there. However, if you're not a JROTC team, I'm sure the information will be just as helpful. So let's go ahead and dive in. Without further ado, we need to download our software to program our robot. To do that, you're going to go to vexrobotics.com and you're going to, from here, select Downloads and then Software. On this list, this page here, you'll see a list of a bunch of different software programs that VEX Robotics offers. For today's purposes and software, we're going to use VEX Code V5. I'm on a Windows machine, so I'll go ahead and download the download for Windows option. Of course, I've already got mine downloaded and installed. So once you download it, get everything going and open it up, it should look something just like what I have on the screen here. So before I go any further in the software, I want to make sure my hardware is ready to go before I start programming. Today I've got just a simple base bot that I threw together just for today's purposes. You can see I've got two motors, I've got my battery mounted, and I have my brain. Now it's a common mistake to forget to take your instruction sheet out here, so go ahead and take your protective cover off. You can pull this sheet out, and left behind will be the robot brain. You can power the brain on by pressing and holding the power button. And then you can go through different programming options and settings in here. We won't cover too much of that today. We're just going to focus on getting a simple autonomous program and again, doing the simple driver control. So I'm going to go ahead and put my screen protector back on so that I don't accidentally damage my brain. And I'm going to set it back down. I always recommend putting your robot propped up on a box or a tool case or something nearby so that it doesn't accidentally drive off the table. It's okay if you can't see my robot. I'll try to show it in the screen when you need to see something. But that's step one. So I've got my robot and I've got my micro USB cable. One of these should have come in your kit. However, it's a very common cable. Micro USB on one side and regular USB on the other. So I'm going to plug that back into my computer. And I'm going to plug the other end directly into my robot brain, right beside where the battery plugs in. Just like so. Once I do, you'll see this indicator up here in the top right corner has turned orange. Yours may turn green. That's okay if it turns green. Actually means you're updated and good to go. As you can see, my firmware on my brain is out of date. So I'm just going to click out of date, and it's going to update the firmware on my brain. Now the firmware is important because that's how the robot talks to all of the electronics, you know, the motors, the sensors, the battery, the radio, so on and so forth. So it's important to keep your brain up to date anytime it has an update. So we'll just pause here and wait a second. And there we go. Firmware is done. Turn brain off to complete the firmware update. So I'm going to turn around and press and hold the power button. Turning my brain off. Then I'm going to press and hold it to turn it back on. Click OK. As you can see, now that my brain is connected, it shows up green. It says what firmware I have and that it is up to date. Great. Now we're ready to start programming our robot. Before we can give any commands, I'm just going to show you around a little bit here. On the left-hand side here, these are all the different programming blocks that we can use to program the robot. You'll notice as we add devices, you'll get more options. Right now it's a bunch of default code that you can use for, you know, events or if you want to put something on the robot brain. But you don't see anything in here about the motors or a controller. Well, that's because we haven't added those items yet. So before I start my code, I'm going to click up here where it said VEX Code Project, and I'm going to save my program. Now my name is Dylan, so I'm just going to call this Dylan's sample code and save it wherever you like. Put mine, no, we'll put it in documents. Save. Okay, now I've created my sample code. The next thing I want to do is make sure I'm programming on the correct slot. The V5 brain is capable of holding 8 different programs, so you can select which slot you want to download it to. So keep this in mind. If you keep downloading to slot 1, you're going to keep overwriting that program again and again. But if you want different programs, let's say you want an autonomous program for the red side and an autonomous program for the blue side, you can put them on different programming slots. So I'm just going to leave mine on slot 1. And now I'm going to set up the devices for my robot. And I do that by clicking this icon right here in the top right corner. So from here, I can click Add Device. And then I get this list of a bunch of different items, electronics that I can add saying these are plugged into my robot brain. Now I have a drivetrain on my robot. I'm going to show you again. I've got 2 motors. So I'm going to say I have a 2-motor drivetrain. And then it's going to say, okay, left motor port. Which one is in your left motor? Well, this is the back of my robot. So I'm going to say right, left. And I'm going to follow this wire back. And I'm going to say my left motor is plugged into port 1. Now, which is my right? My right motor, following my wire back, is plugged into port 9. Yours may be different. Check your robot out, depending on which robot you built, or if your students custom built theirs. Just check to see where those are. And if you have a 4-motor drivetrain, you would choose the 4-motor drivetrain. Now this is asking me if I have a gyro sensor or an initial sensor. I don't have one on mine, so I'm just going to choose no gyro. Now this information here can be adjusted based on your robot. I'm going to leave mine all default. It's asking what wheel size I have, what the track width is, what the wheelbase is, how far apart, what my gear ratio is. And if you're kind of thinking, well, I don't know what a lot of that means, what's a gear ratio? A lot of this can be found in the knowledge base, so help.vex.com. It'll give you a bunch of examples and kind of show you what the software is asking for, what it means. By default, you can leave it in here. It should be good to go if you built one of the base robots. And then finally, it asks what gear cartridge is in our motors. By default, the motors all come with the 18:1 gear cartridge, which is the green one. If you look at a motor, you can actually see a little window. It'll either be red, green, or blue. That's going to tell you which gear cartridge is inside of it. Again, in our case, everything is default. I just put this together out of a box. So I'm going to click Done. Now you can see as soon as I click Done on the left-hand side, I now have drivetrain commands, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window. And I'm going to take a look at my programming section over here. So I have this block that says when started. So this means when I start the program, do whatever is below. So in my case, I just want to write a simple autonomous program. So again, no controller, just having the robot go do something. So I'm going to click this command that says drive forward for 200 millimeters. And this is where you can start customizing your code a little bit. I can click this drop down and say drive reverse or drive forward. And then it says 200 millimeters. Well, I live in Ohio, so I'm in the US. I prefer inches, so I'm going to change it to inches. And I'm going to say drive forward 4 inches. Don't want it to go too far, but 4 inches is what I want to start out with. And then I want to turn. So I'm going to find this command that says turn right, and I'm going to drag it in. I'm going to say turn right for 90 degrees. And then I'll drive forward again. And again, I'm going to change it to inches. And this time I'm going to say go forward for 5 inches. And if you're thinking, how does it know how far 5 inches is? Well, that information that it asked for about your wheelbase and your gear ratio, it's using all of that to understand or do a mathematical guess to where 4 or 5 inches would be. Now, of course, you can adjust this around and change it based on which program you need. but this is just to give you an idea and get you started here in a quick video. So now that I've got an autonomous program wrote, this would cause my robot to drive forward, turn right, and then drive forward another 5 inches. So I want to see it happen. So if I glance over at my robot here, I actually have a radio plugged into my robot, and it's telling me on the screen, apologies if you can't see it, the radio firmware requires an update. So I'm just going to click OK. Anytime the brain tells you something needs an update, just go ahead and do it. It doesn't take very long, usually 20 seconds at the max. And there we go, just like that, the brain is updated and done. So now I'm going to set it back down. I've got my programming cable plugged in, put my screen back on, and in my software, I'm going to click download in the top left corner. It's going to kind of flash like that. I can see on my brain now, it gives me this screen. See if I can show you. That says Dylan sample code, and it says time to run, match, wiring, controls, etc. Well, I'm going to set it back on my blocks to make sure my wheels are off the ground. And right here in the software, I can click run. And just like that, my wheels start spinning. Now, they didn't move very much. They just kind of jittered around. Well, this is where you want to make sure those initial settings are correct, and so that the motors know how far it wants to go, so on and so forth. But this is how you start an autonomous program. I'll probably do another video to get more in depth of, key things to do or tips and tricks when writing one. But this will get your students started. They can start playing with these simple features. If you have an arm on your robot or an intake or a claw, you can go in and go to add devices and then add motors. So, I could add let's just say intake motor here. Intake. It's going to say what direction does it go. Forward, you can name forward and reverse differently. This one, I'm just going to leave it forward reverse, make it simple. If you were to set up your robot and it's going the opposite direction, you can click this button here and it basically flip-flops your forward and reverse. So then I click done. Well, now you'll see, now that I've added a motor, obviously my robot doesn't have an intake, but if your robot did, then you could start using this command, spin intake motor, and turn it to a certain position. The VEX V5 motors have an encoder built into it, so it can actually measure degrees. It knows how far it spins, on a 360-degree axis, how far it spins or how many times it spins. You can do rotations. There's so much you can do. It would take me all day to sit here and go through everything with you. But again, I hope this really just gets you started down the path of trying an autonomous program out. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to do driver control. And let me get my controller ready here. Going to trash this program just by dragging it over here and see the red X. And first thing I want to do is go in and I'm going to add a controller. Just like that. And now this is where the students get to make some options. This says select buttons to set actions. Well, if you click on a joystick, you're going to show this little icon of a robot. And you say, okay, well, what does that really mean? Well, this is something called arcade control or single joystick. So this would control the robot using a single joystick. So forward would be forward, back would be back, left, right, just using one joystick. If you click it again, now it flips it over to this joystick. If you want to use this one instead, you can click it again. Now it puts it in a little bit different mode where this joystick over here is forward and back, and then this joystick is left and right. You can click it once more, and this will be forward and reverse based on these joysticks here. Kind of like tank control, right? The right side controls the right side of the robot, and the left side controls the left side of the robot. Some people prefer that, other people don't. So I'm just going to pick one. And then in this case, in the software, I did put an intake motor. So if you did have another motor on your robot, you could click some other buttons. In this case, I chose L1, L2, and it says forward reverse. So now if I press this and this, it would spin the motor one direction and then back the other. And if you accidentally clicked it, just click it again, choose another option of buttons, and there you go. And that's simple as that, programmed the controller. So if you ran this as a driver control program, that's how it would download and go. So I'm actually going to show you how to do that, because there's a key step you want to make sure you don't forget. I'm going to turn on my controller. If your controller is brand new, it'll have this little sticker on here. I'm going to go and peel my sticker off. And you'll notice, I know you can't see this, the top right corner, it's searching, it's looking for a robot. Well, that's because it needs paired with the radio on my robot. So in order to do that, to pair the controller to the brain, what you need to do is either take a extra cable, V5 cable that can plug into the brain, or in my case, I don't have one, so I'm just going to unplug one of my motors temporarily, plug it into the top of my controller on one of the outside ports. And when I plug it in, I get this little red light telling me that I probably need to update it. Let me pull my screen off, go back. Now I can unplug. I'm going to restart my controller. I restart my brain. This happens sometimes. Turn both back on. And it looks like my controller is looking for an update. Sure enough, I restarted the brain, and I know it's hard to see, but if you can read that, it says the controller assets require an update. Would you like to proceed? So I'm going to click yes or OK. Leave my controller plugged in and let it do its update. All right, my brain is finishing its update to the controller. Meanwhile, I do want to show you a few things about VEX Code V5. There is a tutorials option up here, and it has these nice built-in getting started tutorials to show you how to use the software, everything down to the competition template.
In a V5 blocks project.
They are nice videos you can kind of drag around and work inside your project while they're playing. They're really nice. In addition, you can open example projects. So if you want to learn about something and you don't know what it is, like let's say left arcade control, you could just click on something and it will open that project. Now, unfortunately, right now it only supports one tab at a time, but you can switch back and forth between your project and example projects and read the notes and learn a lot about how to program the robot. Now let me go back to my project, open recent, discard that one. Okay, so I'm going to check, make sure my controller is still here. It is. Now that I've updated my controller, I can unplug it, plug my motor back in. And on my controller, it says updating radio firmware just for a second, and now it's gone. Now they're searching for each other. And now I can see on the controller screen, there is both an icon of a controller and an icon of the V5 brain with a signal in between them that tells me they're connected. Also, not sure if you can see, but the radio on the brain, or on my robot, excuse me, is now flashing. That tells me they are actively connected and working. So let me set that back down. On my brain, I'm going to select my program and then click Start. Oh, I forgot to do something. I changed my program in the software, but I forgot to download it to my robot. So let me download to the robot. I can click Run here. It will start the program. And it didn't do its autonomous program because I deleted it, but now I can control the robot through my joystick. I think I set it to go forward and back and then left and right. And sure enough, that's what my robot is over here doing. So this will just get you started. Again, you can customize and go from here. This is just a sample way to do it. Remember, you can always open an example program and start from there. Start from a tank control or an autonomous program moving forward with rotations or with time, whichever you or your students think would work best. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and we will see you next time.